think you're just really you're doing really cool stuff. All right, downloading that track. And if you are just popping in, this is Atonuv Open Studio. There is an email right down there, atonuvrecords@gmail.com. Some guidelines scrolling at the top of the page. If you've been working on something and would like a second pair of ears to hear it, feel free to send it on in, and I will help you dial in this mix. Cool. Couple of things that I would look out for here. It's good and it does the thing. I'm just gonna caution on a couple of things. Once kind of same thing. It doesn't have a lot happening between 100 and 200, so you don't have any like perceived bass. It's all pretty slammed down there. You've done a good job of separating your low end elements, so it's well like perceived. But there's actually room. Like everything is really, 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 really blown up. Yeah, absolutely. You can send stuff. Everything is really blown up except for 100 to 200. So this points to like a deeper set of kind of like workflow and mindset stuff. Yeah, that's cool. Is it like a sample? Is it like a copyright free acapella or is it a sample? If it's a sample, I'm gonna play it muted on stream. Just let me know. Okay. So everything is really pushed except for like where low end. Okay, cool. I'll just mute it and listen in here, and I can still tell you what's going on. Okay, so we're just pushing and pushing and pushing and it's all good. We're pushing and pushing everywhere, but where we're not pushing is where we would get like the most bang for our buck as far as like perceived bass. So this feeds into kind of what's happening in general. This is also what I would caution against. It is I mean, first off, it's clipping. It's 2 dB over 0, so we're gonna run into stuff there, and it's also it's clipping. So I mean, I would throw a true peak limiter on at the end just to catch that. You might be using a true peak limiter, but this is so slammed up against the ceiling that it's even pushing like a true peak limiter, which this is one of the most squashed tracks I've heard in a long time. We're getting just it's very, very compressed, and it's in the and the mix is really good from 500 on up. So like that's awesome. And it's even good from like 100 on down, and it's that 100 to 200. And I think that this is just pointing towards like the way that you're getting like perceived low end is just by slamming the limiter and we would rather get that in the mix, I guess. Is kind of like what I'm trying to like Yoda this whole thing to get kind of Oh yeah, I mean you did do a good job. Absolutely. This would be to dial it in further. But to I mean basically it's you know, like within like the dubstep world and electronic music world, we want things to be perceived as loud and we want things to be perceived as low end heavy. And some of your targets to like hit like a bigger low end are not quite where I would aim. And also to get loudness. So I mean like to talk about like how crushed this is. I mean first off, we're clipping by 2 dB. Not great. So, and then what we are getting along with that to just hit like I'll just like be like the numbers wonk, okay? Um, we're pushing like DR 2.5, DR 3, like on a lot of those drops. There's a few things to think about on this. First off, it's really, really, really squashy sausage. If you're listening to this like turned up super super loud, it's just like using a compressor on a track. Like you can compress the top and the bottom and then make a sausage and then you can turn it up louder. Same thing with the entire track. But the thing is that if it gets turned down at all, it'll sound exponentially weaker the more that you turn it down. The and you know I would just think about that. Then if you were uploading this to like a if you were to upload this to like a streaming site, this would first off, because of those 2 dB peaks, it would be turned down just flat out 2 dB. So like and this is, I don't care about streaming that much, but I know that people do. Or I mean like I do care about streaming and that it's how everyone listens to music, but as far as like hitting their targets or whatever. But in this case, like we're clipping by 2 dB, and then like Spotify actually wants everything at -1 dB, so this is actually going to get turned down 3 dB. So like your track goes from this lose all of that. And so now we are, we're normalized down, but we're still squishy, squashy, clippy. The clipping's still there, the squash is still there, but it's substantially like quieter in comparison to other stuff. So the clipping is going to get you there. And now, like, okay, so that's streaming. But let's talk about like if this was played at a club. So I'm also like I work with audio, mastering engineer primarily. I'm also front of house in Detroit. So just it's like techno every day of the year. Techno Christmas, electronic music, and when you're working front of house at a big like electronic show, you have to watch out for the average loudness and the dynamic range of what people put on stage, because the speakers, like, you have peak value and then you have average, like a I have friends that have done a techno bar mitzvah. I haven't done one yet, but I'm sure that it could happen. Um, okay, so, like, you're working front of house and people are oh, it totally happens. It's a thing. Uh, but the I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so, like, on a big system, these speakers are rated for a peak wattage, but they are also rated for a peak average loudness because of the physical way that speakers work. They push in and out. Okay, and when you push average loudness, there's less flex on the speaker. So hyper compression is just pushing like a woofer. Okay, and it's like a thing like in front of house world where, like, you know, people will, like, compress their monitor wedges too much and they'll blow, and, like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you are in, like, a super loud, super high pressure situation at, like, a big electronic thing, you are trained, if you see a track that's pinned, you just turn that person down. And the people that are mainlining, that are main staging, the people that are doing the some of the best work in the electronic field, understand this, and they push out things with, like, they're loud, they're perceived as loud, they have a lot of loudness, but they aren't pinned in, and they have that flex because uh, uh, first off, it sounds better, and then second off, it's the same thing as with the streaming. Like, if you are in a situation where you are playing a show on, like, someone else's gear, and it's like a sound company that's invested a lot of money into it, they will turn you down. They will. You've tried to make your track louder and stack up to the loudness of the genre and the other performers, and but as a result, it's going to get turned down because they don't want to just fix their speakers for the next week. Now, that said, there are some people that are like, oh, I don't care if I blow my speakers, but they are few and far between, and they just, I don't know. That's not where I would be aiming for. And then it's like, also like, okay, well, if I play this at, like, a bar just on their system, and it's like, you know, you could walk into any, like, small club or small bar and you'll hear, you know, like, blown out not so great speakers. And that's what this would be, like, kind of designed for. And I would say strive for being the best rather than that. So that's kind of like the whole you know, like, a healthier dynamic range sounds better. It'll translate better across more systems, and it will be louder at like a festival situation. And could you make Nikki downloadable? Yep, I'll hit the old refresh. load that up and listen back off stream. Thanks for the follow. Hey, no worries. It's totally fine for me. This is pretty good. Okay. This mix is a lot cleaner in a lot of ways, and the loudness is way more on target. Um, so that's awesome. That's really good stuff. The reach the goal. Yeah, the wave. Sometimes you can just look at the waveform and go like, yeah, this is gonna be better. Um, Here's the thing, it's clipping still. You're dB and a half over 0. So you got to use a true peak limiter, especially when you're trying to get like super loud. This also speaks to probably a systemic thing. What's up, Spokesbach? Um, the like gain staging your mix, which I mean we could talk about gain staging for like a while on stream, or yeah, I'm not sure what your gain staging philosophy is, but I don't want to over talk about it if you're already doing it. So so it could be this could speak all the way back to the beginning of the mix process, or it's just that you're just slamming your limiter too hard, or you're not using a true peak limiter. But yeah, you're like almost 2 dB over 0. Pop that down. I mean, like, I target like minus 0.1, and that's like vaguely controversial in the modern age because like technically streaming services want -1, but I don't think it sounds as good. I don't think it sounds as loud. It doesn't really matter. And when you pin your ceiling that 0.9 dB lower, that means that your dynamic range is decreased, and dynamic range is more important then the number and like some inner sample peaking, like that's fine. It's generally invisible and like grew up on MP3s, whatever. Uh but I'm controversial when I hit minus point -0.1 as my target peak. 2 over, no good. Beyond controversy. True peak limiter, and then the mix is good. It's very cramped from 500 to 2K. Lots of masking. Nothing's really. Basically, everyone is fighting for that patch of mid range, and it's that's the crucial. Those are the mids. They got to be cleaned up a little bit. Like vocals are there, the effects are there, the drums are there. Like everyone is just pushing and pushing and pushing. We're not like overrepresenting the mid range. It's like it doesn't like the mix doesn't feel mid rangey. Like I don't turn it on, it doesn't feel like I'm in a boombox. It feels the mix feels full as a and yeah, so like minus point. I mean, just think about it. That's you have an extended target, and that's what's really interesting is sometimes I've seen some crazy mixes come across where they're peaking at like 4 over 0, and those sometimes sound better because they're artificially increasing their dynamic range. It's like someone that's just like pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing everything, but it still is at like DR6 because it's adding 4 decibels on top. And if you took that same thing and crushed it into the limiter without a true peak limiter, then it would have the dynamic range of 2. But in that like insane scenario of like 4 or 5 over 0, it's technically DR6, but most of that dynamic range is clipping. So like not great, but it strangely feels better than a mix that's pinned at 0.1 with like 2 dB of dynamic range. So it's like people are always like, I like how this sounds for like an indescribable reason, and it's because it has like room to pump a little bit, strangely. But yeah, so you get a little more out of minus 0.1, like a little more. But like when we're talking like loudness wars and we're trying to like squeeze the absolute best fidelity out of a loud recording, I want that 1 dB. So that's why I do it. Okay. So back to this track. 500 to 2K, very, very like, so within the context of the entire mix, your mix is good. It's full and it's filled out and it feels good. But individual elements are just squashed into the mid-range and they don't have any definition and they're all masking each other and nothing. You need to make decisions about what is going to be the part of this mix that matters, basically. They're all just fighting for that crucial bit. And then 3 to 6K is a little bit underrepresented in your mix. So you could take some of that energy that you're trying to do, like excitement and give presence to on some of those elements, and take them away from like 1 to 2K and spread them out to 3 to 6K, basically. And that's all I'm concerned about on this mix. It's really, it's good. I like what you did, and you hit like a very, very reasonable, like all of your aim was like pretty on target on this one. Spokespock, you gave up. Which track was it? I like Tom Holland. Um, which track was it? We could totally look at it again. Yeah, or maybe just send me the link again. I Avenged. Thanks for the follow. Night Star. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't remember your exact track. Oh, Night Star Maker 7? Uh yeah. Tobey Maguire, totally respectable Spider-Man choice. All right. I remember this track. So, nah. So keep all chat Ozzy. That is the rules. So, basically what this needs so what did you do on the mix? Like what moves did you make and how did you go about them? Cool. And what are you monitoring on? Cool. And which speakers do you have? Right. Okay. So just remember that uh you the way that your room is set up, the way that that your speakers are. So you are like as far as like feeling like sub is missing, like just remember sub is technically anything under 60 hertz. You're focusing your energy below 60 hertz. Your system doesn't accurately reproduce below 60. Like it just doesn't. You don't get the actual response of the sub region. So you're focusing all of this energy where you can't even hear it accurately. So in order to achieve it, you are compensating for your system because you know the way that systems are rated, it's like uh, it goes down. Oh yeah. Your headphones don't accurately reproduce it either, because bass like requires like space to happen. You're getting like perceived sub, um, and once again, it's like underrepresented, and so by pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, um, below 60, you're getting like an artificial bump, basically, like it is being perceived as sub, because it's pushing the the system that you have to replicate more, but it's not real. That's the thing. So by focusing all of this attention into a place that you don't actually have an accurate picture of, then you're missing out on getting it where bass actually is. And you gotta so yeah. Perceived bass, like on like a lot of systems, we can get a decent amount of 60. Like it's still underrepresented. Like you probably don't have the full picture of what's happening at 60 hertz, but a lot of systems will at least get close. That's why I kind of call like 50, 60 kind of my cutoff, um for what we're looking for. That's why I beef up the kick there. And then bass is 100 to 200. That's where bass is. Like perceivable bass, and then mid-range harmonics are at like 500, 600, 700 on bass. That's how you get like perceivable bass. Making it sound good is going to take a lot of practice and going to take a lot of uh, a lot of, I mean, unfortunately, I'm just going to say practice, practice, and getting used to working in this template, and that is one of the things. Now, as far as like making those drums punch, it's like how to make those drums punch is like by cutting away bass at 60 and letting the kick be there, and then giving love to the snare at like 1.5K and 200, so on and so forth. That's going to punch that up. But did you give mid-range definition to the synth and like the melody? Okay. So that should be like achieving a level of balance there, because that's like a huge thing. We don't have that. Um what what are you using for like an EQ? Like what's I mean mostly it's just about like yeah, how were you processing it? What was your move? All right, we've got a Facebook track. Okay, right on. Um I Can you send me like what happened? If you have that, because I can kind of like I could tell you like these are the moves. If I can hear it, then I can see like maybe where you push too far. Because it's a balancing act. Like maybe you overcompensated on a couple of things, and that's the thing. Like as far as okay, Cool. Yeah, if you can't right now, but like, tomorrow or like literally any day, if you want to send me what the revision yielded, then we can help dial in it further. I mean, you know, I'm here to bounce advice off of. Uh, and I want to give people as much like not because it is like this is the frequency spectrum. These are the areas that you would pay attention to. And then as far as like the like detailed like nitty gritty of like I make this move and then this move is the counter move and then it's going to influence like these moves down the line. That comes from practice, and I can't unfortunately like I can't make those moves basically. That's got to be like in the room on the faders doing the thing, and it comes from like a level of like ear training and experience. But oh yeah, I I barely use Facebook. Yeah. Oh, I was just saying, I said Facebook earlier. I do like simulcast to Facebook so that, maybe we get like a random person here or there, but I don't use it. I hate it. Um okay, so let's get to this. So there is another submission, but Spock, just send me your latest revision and then we can dial it in from there. That's basically where I would say this would have to be at this point, and then I can point you in the next direction to look. I do recommend in the tiles on Twitch. There's a link to Sound Gym. I think it's really awesome. And if you are ever feeling like your mixes aren't quite working, I think Sound Gym is really, really, really good. Okay, so this is from Gmail. Gmail 12345678990, who is just sending something to my email. I have no idea where you are or who you are, but let's listen to this track. Oh, Ishmael. What's up? I see you. If I remember right, you mix on headphones. Am I right? Yeah, it's got those Boards of Canada vibes. This is stuff that I really like. I love the synthy world. Yeah, I can tell you mix on headphones. That's going to be my biggest thing on this. Yeah, I got time.
This whole imagery of human being as something made by a master craftsman became too much for the Western world. Because everybody constantly felt that they were under the surveillance of the Lord, being watched and being judged at every moment. I have a friend who is a very intelligent composer, and in her bathroom she has one of those old-fashioned toilet operations where there's a tank near the ceiling and the chain which you pull, and then there's a pipe which goes down to the tank to the ceiling. And on this pipe there is a little clamp with a big eye on it, this kind of eye. And underneath in Gothic lettering it says, "Thou God seest me." So in the most private apartment of the house, where one closes the door and locks it, there is the all-seeing eye of the eternal judge of the universe.
Ishmael, this track is beautiful, and I love the composition. I love the sound design. I love the synths. I also am like pretty like good with your mix in like a lot of like mix things, but you've got a fatal flaw in your phasing. And that is just going to it's and once again, I'm not a phase hawk, but this is like you play it in space and it's like you're in like a pretty uncomfortable space. It's just phasing, and then you mono collapse it and like almost the entire track collapses on itself. It's too phased out, it's too pushed to the side. This is like you're your headphone mixing, you have to be way more conservative on your stereo spread. And then after that, it's like, yeah, like Vaudeville was saying, it's like this could just fit into that like synthy lo-fi world and be totally good as is. It's a little bit heavy on the upper mids, and I would temper that with some beef from 100 to 200, even within like kind of like a lo-fi VHS vibe. But like first things first, fix that phasing. I would recommend like get like the cheapest set of speakers in the world just to check your phase and your mono collapse. Because I love your stuff. I love what you're doing. and I think your compositions rule, and your sound design is excellent and sounds really, really, really good. Oh, it's old. It's a few years old. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to tighten this up, I would just, like, if you're looking to make this better, it's just like pull in that stereo image, give it some bass, make it louder. And then call it a day. It's an awesome track. Okay, Vaudeville, I'm not sure if did you send another track, or did you want me to dive back into what you sent? Did I not play that? I'm sorry. I think I got like sidetracked. I downloaded it. Yeah, we got a sausage here.
It's been a couple of days by now since I've been trapped in you. I've been down on my knees, begging you, please. Won't you let me go? 'Cause I'm through.
Great track. Your bass is phasing a lot. I grew up under the church of Trent Reznor, so they're right there with you. Yeah, bass is phasing. And, that's just like the one thing that can't phase. Everything else is debatable, everything else is up for grabs, but if your bass line is phasing, uh, you'll run into some issues. So, like, just suck in that bass. Mono it. Uh, you know, it's worked for 70 years. Let's keep doing it. Bass is phasing, and it's very, very, very heavy up to 100 and then pretty light from 100 to 200. So kind of same issue. We're overrepresenting where we could be much, less heavy-handed, and then you're underrepresenting where you could just shove bass into 100 to 200, and with if you use like an analog style EQ and then a compressor with like a little bit of vibe, like a Fairchild 1176, something like that, and just shove 100 to 200 into that, it'll sound awesome, and it'll sound huge and thick and like bass, bass, bass. And you can get real heavy on a mix right there if you shape it. So yeah, bass is too heavy where it's not really doing us any good, and like not heavy enough where we could get more. And at the heaviest parts of the track, it's like 2 clicks too loud. But if you brought back if you weren't swamping below like 80, below 60, then we're probably right about on target. It's just it's stuffing up it's gumming up the works. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I love that track. It's really good. It's a really, really, really good track. Just polish up. Basically, the phasing bass is that's just going to be like that's a hard no, and then getting more perceived bass out of the track, I would also say is like it is pretty necessary, and then it's like just clicking back off that limiter like one notch, which might just be accomplished by solving your bass. It would be worth evaluating. The vocals are like within the style, the vocals are a little buried, a little, and it's almost like within the style, within the genre, which I am intimately familiar with. It's like buried vocals to a degree are like in style. This is like one layer, like it's one click back than I would want even on a buried vocal. But it might just be getting kind of swamped by the general like low end soup, and that could also be addressed just by cleaning up the bottom end of your mix. It might just feel a little better. If that doesn't do it, it's like I would take away some of that upper mid range from something and then give it to the vocal. Just a, like 1 dB cut on something and a dB boost on the vocal from like 1 to 2K, and then you're good to go. Yeah, happy to help. All right, this is a Ton of Open Studio, here every night starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working on a track and would like some fresh perspective from an audio engineer, you can just send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. It's that email right there. There's some guidelines for sending in a track up top, if you don't mind giving those a read. That's what we're doing. I have been doing this. I started doing this in the summer, and then I had to take a couple of months off because I ran into some horrendous internet issues. But we, going back at it real strong. I think we're at the 3 weeks straight mark. I could check, but I think it's about 3 weeks. So, doing the first Sunday fun day, I've got RimWorld popped up. So in between tracks, I'm going to try to keep these colonists alive and do that. But by all means, if you at any point have a mix that you would like to send in, please interrupt me limping these colonists through their wretched colony existence and send me some stuff. Um, I kind of play a little bit of everything. Uh, I have always done a little bit of stuff. I do. I like to. Let's see. So I haven't played. Okay, I mean, honestly, I haven't like picked up a new game in a really long time. But like, I grabbed like Fallout 4 and then didn't like it as much as like old Fallout. So I started playing New Vegas again. For the first time in a while because I really like New Vegas. And then yeah, New Vegas is awesome. That's kind of like if I was just to pick like what is my favorite game of all time, it would probably be New Vegas. Yeah, and the story and just the like the kind of inherent wackiness of everything. Like my favorite my favorite part of New Vegas was the expansion where uh the scientists from the 50s put their brains in those robots and then they slowly went insane over 200 years and then they're just running experiments in the simulation. That's just like top-notch sci-fi. I love that bit. And then I'll just like pull up like whatever like first person like blah shooter is happening at the moment and like blow off steam. But that's basically it. Unreal Tournament. Oh, at the beginning of quarantine, I picked up Doom Eternal, and that was sweet. I did. I just like it was in like April, right at kind of the whatever stage of everything. So I Yeah, I played the first one, and it was like good, but Eternal is just like it's like it's like perfect as far as the they added like a um I think it was the flamethrower that they added to kind of like the combat circle, and it just like really put things over the top. Cool. Take care, get some good sleep, and keep on dialing in those mixes. It's really good stuff. All right, this is a ton of open studio. If you're just popping in, I'm here every single night at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working on a mix and you would like some fresh perspective on it, by all means, interrupt me from this colony. That I'm trying to keep them happy. I'm trying to give them some food. They're gonna have their own bedrooms. I'm hoping for happy off-world refugee settlers. gonna get a party zone. Yeah, absolutely, man. Oh, it is RimWorld, and it is uh so hellish. It's really fun, but basically it's like a outer space crash landing scenario, and you have to build a colony from scratch, and it's I just basically just kill my colonists over and over and over again, and they become very unhappy, and it's very frustrating. It's like perfect for an audio engineer to just kind of like tinker with. So I'm doing a Sunday fun day because I realized I think that this is just 3 weeks straight of everything, and it's really awesome. But I'm like, let's do something a little fun on the brain for today. But yes, please send a track. Yeah, it's not sustainable. I mean, as of this moment, it's uh like for the next like few months in normal times I would be doing like front of house stuff and also like having bands come in and record, and it's just not going to happen this year. So I figure this is like a perfect time to kind of like get a bunch of people involved on this end of things, and then I'll go to like a more like regulated schedule for the stream because I really do like doing this. But yeah, as far as sustainability, it'll be a little more calendar-y after the little bit. But for the next few months, this is kind of like this is a very decent way to not go absolutely crazy in a cabin in the woods. Dope. Got your track.
Sometimes in the dark, everything stops. I know it's way too much to ask, but I can't go on if you don't love me back. So I ask, my words just ricochet. Slide beneath the trees, the whole world spins right by. You tell me what you need, just a little room to breathe. It hurts my pride, and you cry. You and I both ricochet. My heart is like an ocean. Your heart is frozen still. Coming up from the ground.
While this is finishing up, Ian, can you kind of run me through
Morning haze.
kind of like what revisions because like I said, client is, emperor of the mix, like for sure. But could you give me like a little bit of the back and forth here, for some background before I, do the thing?
just before we it all begins to ricochet.
Could you just like kind of fill me in on what the client wanted out of this revision and kind of how you went about it? Just like kind of like what's give me the because I basically remember the last iteration, and then what was the client feedback on that? What were they looking for, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? Looks like the last ricochet I have is mix 3, and this is mix 6.
I know it's way too much to ask, but I can't go on if you don't love me back. So I ask
Cool. Level changes is cool.
you and I both ricochet. What you need, just a little room to breathe.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to do like a little bit of back and forth. It's way more controlled on this new version, like dynamically and everything. There is just a lot more control. There has been a fair amount of like definition kind of dialed back, and it's a little bit like blankets over the speakery at this point. And it's the vocal is not it's not sitting quite as on top as I would, but like once again, I don't want to like get in the way of like, this is why I ask. I don't want to get in the way of like client negotiations, And yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's good. I love the track. I love the mix. The thing that I'm concerned with is that vocal just doesn't have any.
You and I both ricochet. What you need,
Yeah. Um. Cool. And did you? I mean, you ran like the reference mic and everything. It'd be cool to see your. If you want to send me your SonarWorks profile, that would be pretty sweet to see. Um. Yeah. Yep. With the whoop 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 whoop. It's really annoying. Uh. I honestly. I wear gun muffs when I sonar works because it is annoying as heck. Um, okay, yeah, I think that this mix is really good, and it might be like you're throwing another variable at it. You're like you calibrated your speakers, and like you just got new speakers. You just did all X Y Z, so you're kind of like you're at the moving target stage of your mixing. So, there might be a few things that you got to iron out with just like how you're hearing stuff. Um yeah. um I but also, like doing stuff kind of drastically could also like force some like radical change, and maybe maybe that's what it needed. But yeah, basically I'm happy with everything, but it's like everything's lacking a little bit of definition, and then I'm definitely concerned about those vocals. I think that they're buried. I think it's just straight up like blanket over the speakers, and it might be that. I mean, first off, send me your sonar works. Send me what you got, and I I think that like with the monitors that you got, like once you like it's kind of this thing, like once you flatten out like good studio monitors, it takes a minute to adjust to it because this actually makes a lot of sense. I would say that really, really good monitors are hyper detailed in the upper mid range, and that's what makes them good. And when they get flattened out and we don't have like um and we're not hyping like the low end, uh just send me a screenshot. So yeah, I mean, like generally speaking, like bad monitors will hype the lows or the lower mids or whatever, and then good monitors are detailed in the mids and the upper mids. That's what makes them good and useful for mixing. But once we flatten out the low mids, then when we start mixing on that system, it can feel like it's heavy on the high end. So I think that would explain what I'm hearing. It's just vocal definitely needs to poke out over the top, and and then the whole mix is a little bit blankety. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and it's like it's very interesting how this is playing out. Your mix basically looks like your room used to look. Does that make sense? Yeah, adjusting the rear bus mix would absolutely change the vocal level because like if you've set up rear bus, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um Because the vocal is what's riding the rear bus. So when the vocal hits it, other things duck. That's why it works. That's why it's beautiful. And it also saturates the vocal and gives it presence in the upper mids. So that would absolutely do everything that we're seeing. The vocal is a little bit it's a little bit under the mix, and it's also a little bit underrepresented in the upper mids. Done. Uh that makes sense. That potentially makes sense. I'm also so I'm looking at, and maybe some other stuff has happened. So the last thing that I have from you is mix 3, and this is mix 6. So maybe there's a few other generational changes. Yeah. So I like the vocal tone, but I don't like how it's sitting. And basically, I would I would look for more of that like upper mid range sparkle and air on the vocal to push it over. Uh, but it could also, I mean, you've got some headroom. You could just turn the vocal up and see if that does it. But it feels a little bit underwater. It feels a little bit like there's a blanket over it. Um, it's just I'm looking at this SonarWorks profile and I'm looking at your mix and it's really funny. It's basically I mean it's really awesome. Like it means, your instincts and your ear is there, but you kind of tweaked the mix to sound how your room used to sound. Like almost exactly. And as far as the room as a whole, so I'm just looking at a graph. On SonarWorks, what you're gonna want to do is make sure that you are turning on um so at the bottom of it, there's it says 0 latency. You're gonna want to turn that to linear phase because you've got I mean, first off, the thing that is looking weirdest here is like at like 200. You've got your speakers pushing in opposite directions. Uh, we want to avoid that. But if you switch your SonarWorks to linear phase, that'll help make that adjustment. And then, yeah, basically, you're kind of past the danger zone from 100 on down. That makes sense. A little bit of bass trap, like basically like plus minus 6 is like good. And you're like plus minus 8 below 100. And then it's just like a little bit bumpy up to 200, and then you're pretty good. But then what's really funny is that like your room and your speakers were scoopy from like at around 2K, and then scooped above 8K. And now this mix is scooped at 2K and scooped from 8K on up. And it's amazing what oh yeah, let me do that. But it's amazing what the ear will do. Like the human brain is incredible. That's what I'm gonna like chalk this up to. And yeah, you like subconsciously recreated your room. All right, so you know, way down here, that's an over representation, and SonarWorks is really, really, really good at everything above 100 hertz. It's like basically perfect at lining that stuff up. You're not going to get a perfect picture of your low end as is, so this would need to be addressed with are your speakers still in the windowsills? It's kind of like, like a little bit of speaker placement is going to help out. But big bump, big dip. And like that's dangerous to have this level of swing right here, especially in your low end. So we would want to adjust that with some trapping. And that should be able to, like, a good, like a lot of super chunk, or like one of those tri-corners could get this, and then also extend up and smooth out some of this low mid stuff. But right down here, it's this control that I'm talking about, the filter zero latency. Switch that to linear phase. It's a little more taxing on the CPU, but not that much. I will sometimes I'm mixing with zero latency, like if it's a big mix, and then I switch to linear phase for mastering or for like a final check on the mix. And yeah, here's where it gets interesting. It's like this dip right here, and it's just like it's like 4 dB, so it's within the realm of like okay for a room, but 2K, we're really, really sensitive right there, and that's why it's so critical to dial in like a really, really good like upper mid range because of how sensitive it is. So previously to SonarWorks, you had like a 3-4 dB dip right in this region, and then a 3-4 dB dip, like this is probably about 8K, and I think that your ears are really good, basically, because you just kind of like recreated this through your moves on that mix. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a sub, like turning it down is a thing, and you'll get a more accurate picture. The There's the bass tilt controls on SonarWorks, so like you can flatten it out, and then you can like add some like I would turn your sub down. I would like flatten out your room as is, and then you could play around with the tilt on SonarWorks to make it sound more how you would like to sound, and uh I tell people like that, like if they like mixing with like more low end, like yeah, put more low end in your system to compensate once you get a feel for your room and a feel for your mixes and how they're translating. Yeah, and I know that you've been working on this for a really long time, and I don't want to make you chase your tail on this mix, but that is um
Tell me what you need. Just a little room to breathe. It hurts my pride. And you cry.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's down to like 2 dB, like 2K, 4K, 6K on that vocal. It's not opening up and it's not pushing out. And also, okay, is the client happy? That's the like once again, that's the most important question. Are they happy as this stands? Okay, well there we go. So they're stoked. You should be stoked. That's great. Um, I would do like one more revision, and I would just try to, and we're talking like just do like um we're talking about like a 2 dB boost on the vocals at 2K, 4K, 6K. Pultec, Neve would do the trick. An SSL would be great. Like just to give it a little bit of like sparkle, edge, and push over the top, and then it would be good. And then you don't have to touch any levels. You don't have to make any big dramatic decisions that they're gonna go like, this isn't the mix that we liked. It's like a pretty subtle thing that we're going for. And then, as a whole, like this mix is pretty like mid-range, low mid-range centered. Which for the vibe and for that kind of like old school emulation thing, it's like well within standard practice for it to be like a like kind of warm, it's warm. It's a warm mix. So I think that's cool, but it needs, because it's like kind of weighted towards the low mids, then we gotta make sure that it's opened up top like a little bit. That we got that sparkle. Otherwise uh it runs the risk of being muddy without that bit of sparkle and air put on to the important elements of the mix. Nah, like I like to say sparkle about like 4K, 6K. Like perceived sparkle, okay? I like above 10K, I'm like, yeah, that's air. Like it's um in like very very practical terms, like if we think about it musically, like I'm a violinist, so like this is 440. This is 880. And then 1760. And then so like right here, right below 2K, this is basically like top range of a melody instrument. And then there's 4K, and that's just mouse squeaks. And then 8K, just like squeaky door. So, I think about these regions in very, very like practical terms. It's like all of the note data basically ends at like 2K, like any sort of reasonable like melody thing, 2K. So then anything above 2K, we're talking about harmonics and sparkle and like pushing the character of the instrument. We're outside of note, we're outside of meat, we're outside of melody. So this is the harmonic range, that's when it starts. And I think that depending on the instrument, that that's where it's like where we can push an extra degree of character, an extra degree of sparkle. A bass's sparkle or character is at like 700 because that's where its meaty harmonics are. But like the melody instruments are gonna have like actual raw fundamentals between 300 and 1K generally, depending on like what it is. So then they're gonna have harmonics that are viable 2K, 4K, 6K, 8K. Yeah, I mean, so I can't remember. I know that there's odd harmonics and even harmonics, and there's a dictionary definition, and I'd have to Google it, but yeah, there's like there are some that are like double the uh uh yes. Oh, okay. Yes, that is absolutely. I can say with authority. Yes, some instruments' harmonics push higher than others, and it's not even constrained to like a class of instruments. Like some violins have stronger harmonics in the even order or odd order than like another violin. And a bass will have different character than a different bass. And it's instrument to instrument, it's performer to performer. You get more harmonic content out of how you play. Like if you play closer to the neck, you get less harmonics, and if you play closer to the bridge, you get more harmonics. So, and it changes the character of those harmonics. So it has to be addressed like on a instrument by instrument, mix by mix, song by song level. Um, so that's like all that's like what has to be addressed in this mix. It feels like there's not enough character up in that region, that we're not getting that harmonic push, and we're not getting, and that's what like tricks the ear into thinking that things are bold and forward and full of character. And it's also tricky business because we're pushing like up in that zone where the ear is sensitive, and it's high frequency information, and so on and so forth. And like when it comes down to performance stuff, like on the voice, like the more that the diaphragm is pushing air, so like the louder the singer is, the more harmonics it's pushing. That's why that's why performance matters, and we can't just like crank something. And sometimes that's like why we're compressing a vocal so much, is because maybe they did like a weak performance. There wasn't enough of that initial thing, and we're trying to squeeze out that harmonic content with what we've got, and so on and so forth. And that's like why we want to encourage like kind of like big performances, because then we can get that harmonic edge out of the vocal naturally, as opposed to like kind of cooking it in post. Um, this is, I mean, I hate to use Bono as an example, but this is why Bono's voice is like easy to record. It's why his name, that's why his nickname was Bono Vox, like good voice, like it's good voice. And you can hear it on like a lot of that like late 80s, early 90s U2 stuff. Like when you're listening for it, it's like it's such a huge harmonic push, and it's one of the best recorded examples of this, for better or for worse. Oh, right on. Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Sometimes it's weird. Like I'm kind of like just talking in my room, and then I'm eventually just talking about Bono for a while, and I'm like, is this landing? Harmonic information on the vocals or some other instrument that's really important in the mix should take priority over the higher pitched instrument's fundamental frequencies. Depends on the mix. Uh, and that's actually a really really interesting question. I just had to deal with this like a little bit ago, um, where there I was mixing an album, and there were two tracks on that album that had live strings, or I guess there were like three or four tracks, but two where the strings had very very similar functions in the song, but had to be mixed incredibly differently because of uh and this is getting into like I could just say like hard and fast, like yeah, if we're trying to push something over the top, like absolutely that's how the harmonics are. But like if we're getting into the nitty gritty, it has to be addressed mix by mix to do the absolute best job. And having like and so this is like a frustrating answer, this is a Yoda answer, as I sometimes I go into Yoda, but it's like it entirely depends on the song is the best answer, but most frustrating. Uh, but like for example, I was doing this album, and two tracks, the strings had very similar lines, and there was a very basically similar arrangement around it, but not quite exactly the same. And in one mix, pushing the strings way over the top harmonically was like opening up the sky, and like everything made sense, and the mix was perfect, and it was awesome. And like I like just sucked energy out of the low mids, let the rest of the mix take over there, and then let the strings soar over the top and just cooked them at like 6K, 8K. And it sounded huge and bright and beautiful, and then everything carried along, and then the vocal was doing this ethereal thing with the strings, and the vocal was uh, like a soprano vocal. So the fundamental was hanging out at like 800 to 1K, and I gave it that sparkle and edge at like 2 to 4K, and then it just played nicely with the strings, and the mix was great, and it made sense within the context of the song, and it served the song because the song needed to open up. The song did, not the mix, not the numbers. The song needed to feel like it was just lifting and soaring at that exact moment. Then there was another track where it was like very similar. It was like the within the same album, recorded by the same people, the same instruments, like et cetera, et cetera. And it was similar in that it was the end of the song, and all of a sudden strings come in to like add the string weight and all of that. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to pull up I just nailed the strings on that last song. Let's just, I'm just going to kind of like copy some moves, move them over to this track, and let's do it. It's going to happen. And it didn't work. It absolutely sounded bad. I mean, because it was different performances, there's lots of variables, and it wasn't just like a subtle change. It wasn't like, oh, I can just shave off a little bit. It was just wrong for the song for it to open up and for it to become this angelic, like soaring thing. It was wrong for the song. And then what I wound up doing was the complete and total opposite. I took lots of harmonic information away from the strings and then made them root in their fundamental between 200 and 600, and just like warmed it up there. I probably threw it through like a Fairchild and I can't remember exactly what I did, but I focused the energy of the strings into their fundamental low mid-range home, and took away that information, and then the mix worked, and then the song worked. So it's like that's like an example that I can remember from, I don't know, that was like 4 months ago, but it's like exactly kind of like the same situation. It's like there are vocals and strings, and sometimes it is the answer and sometimes it's not. But in the case of this mix, I can tell you that the vocal needs to come out over the top more. That's what I can definitely say that right here, that the vocals gotta pop out, pop out of the speakers and to like directly answer like what's in front of me. But like broad philosophy, a like a great mix is like riding the song, and letting the song dictate. It's kind of like a good mix gets everything in order, and then a great mix lets the song dictate those final moves. And then you become like a messenger of you're serving the song. Which is honestly like I like to work as fast as I can on just like there can be. Yeah, you can like blow up the you can get some like gravelly like undertones exist for sure. And those can become part of the character, and then once again it's like, does it serve the song? Um like I wouldn't aggressively high pass Tom Waits, you know? Um Yeah, and I'm like with high passing, I'm like medium aggressive. There are certainly like uh there are like very, 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 very clean mixers doing like hyper pop that are like pretty like snip snip with the high pass. Um, but I personally like things like what happens when you like aggressively high pass is you do lose like like it is like there's rumble and noise and stuff. And I think that there are a lot of great recordings that have that. You know? And I like that little bit of edge and I like that bit of energy down there. But I'm also like a mud hawk and I will aggressively like scoop out low mid information from stuff, but I'll high pass semi conservatively. Depending on the instrument, depending on the performance, and depending what's down there. Like if it's just garbage and it's like definitely not good, um, and like the mix is definitely better when you high pass it, then yes. Um, have you? I forget. First off, do you have any sort of Pultec style EQ? Speaking of guitar, this is getting into just like tips and tricks. But there is a okay, yeah, yeah, the waves one will do the trick. Do you ever boost cut the guitar? Cool. Yeah, yeah. I abuse that is something that I just absolutely abuse on guitars. And which speaks to like technically like that 100 to 200 region isn't like usable from guitar and gets in the way of the bass, etc., etc. But like that Pultec boost cut at 100 can really really bring out that um kind of like saturated edge from the low end of guitar and make it sit nice in the mix, and it's awesome. That's one of my favorite, like on rhythm tracks and stuff, because it drives the track along, and it's like good for the song. And yeah, I wouldn't do it on this one for that reason. We don't have like a driving rhythm guitar that's like moving the track along. Uh, but sometimes it is the answer. But basically, you're kind of like, especially with like this is like a really good recording. This is a really great track. This is a great song. And if this is the kind of stuff that you're working on, it's like you're in this unfortunate place. Well, it's not unfortunate because it rules because like you're working with stuff that's good. But when you are doing good songs, then we get into this uh it's you're forced to go outside of kind of like cookie cutter mixing, because there is a million you can Google away like how should I mix this, and like a lot of that is like pretty good like advice. It's like pretty solid like starting points for stuff. But then once you're starting to get like this is a song and then all of the instruments are pointing towards a larger idea, then everything becomes so song dependent. and the mix has to artistically reflect the intentions of the song. So much so that we can't rely on just like a standard set of moves. And I would say that you want to have the standard set of moves so under your fingers that you can make them really quickly, which is why I like a template. I mean, I'm saying like, oh, it's not a cookie cutter mix, but it's like the template to launch us into, I mean, just cleaning stuff up and making everything like work nicely together and not clash, et cetera, et cetera. Like a good mix. We just want to like get right past that and then go like, how do I make the song breathe and how do I make the song work? And that gets into like a little bit of like rule breaky stuff. Um, which like to point to like a famous example, which I don't know. I'm just thinking about U2 all the time, I guess. But more fun, like Brian Eno's mixing, because Brian Eno isn't like like a just like boom done mixing engineer. It's definitely more on the probably the most like commercially successful artistic mixer. Um, yeah. Eno, let me check the exact, because there's a lot of like production. Uh, Let me see which U2 he did. Right. Okay. So those are so it's like Eno and Daniel Lanois, who is more of like an engineer, but Eno got tapped to do Unforgettable Fire for U2. And those Eno productions have a lot of things that aren't like technically correct within them, but they serve the song so well. And it pushes into a whole other thing. Same thing with the Coldplay album that Eno did, and I hate Coldplay. Like I lived in New York for like 6 years, and it was just like you go shopping and it's just nonstop Coldplay 24/7, especially in like Bushwick 6 years ago. Man, I do not like Coldplay, but there is an undeniable like perfection. It was X and Y or Y and Z or whatever, and Eno's on that. And it's such a really, really unfortunately good example of someone shaping the song's sonic profile to uh, carry through like a deeper thing. And it's like undeniably like really good on that end. And that's just from like Eno's just a person who listens and kind of reacts to the track. And then of course like to not just point to constant terrible stuff, it's like Eno's Bowie stuff. Like heroes and everything. Like what a really, really, really great example of just someone listening to the song and going like, well, obviously this is the answer. great. Then you're in a really, really good spot. I just found this fun article. I'm gonna put it in chat. But yeah, I mean, you're making just solid decisions and moves here. So, great for not having that much experience. It sounds really good. And I just got sent something to listen to off stream. Cool. Yeah, solid move. And that's a really great way to do it. So yeah, I mean, awesome work. You're making good decisions. Yeah. So I would leave SonarWorks on. Like you got to just commit to do it. Like if you're going to do it, you got to do it. Um I would uh I would head to Sound Gym. I think that there's like the free like daily thing that you can do on Sound Gym. I think that there's something, and I would just do that. I would do some ear training, and also just like listen to a bunch of music through through the system. I have a playlist that I put on whenever I hit like go into a room, um, that I know the tracks really well, and then it just like it you know it puts my ears in the room, and the ear is remarkable at like adjusting to a room. So um listen to music on your system. That's kind of a boring answer, but to like fully adjust to your room, like commit to only listening to music on your system for like a week or two. um it's I would say it's a mixture. It's like I'll really, really focus for a bit and then kind of just let it play and then focus for a bit and then let it play and just kind of I mean even when I'm not going into a room, I like put on a playlist when I'm like firing up my system before I start like working on stuff. And I just kind of like am in the room for a bit and get the ears adjusted, and then I go into stuff. But I'll put on like a few tracks, like 3 to 5 in the morning, and then move on. Um then for uh I would say that I do intense listening for like 2 tracks, like when I go into a room, and like I have like a couple of tracks that I just like know exactly what like 60 sounds like. I know what 100 sounds like. I know what 1K is supposed to sound like on it, and then I'll make those adjustments in my head. Or if I'm doing like a show, then I just adjust the system until it sounds right. And I'll bend the universe a little bit to suit my will. But yeah, that's about it. It's like 50-50. Yeah, people can catch the replay. Cool hanging out with you. Hope you're having a good one. And yeah, you're real close to dialing in this mix. And yeah, I mean, then the furthest, like, you know, dial it in, feel real good about it, but don't like get sucked in to something too much. Is like the biggest of Yoda advice that I can give. Especially if the client is stoked. Like, there you go. All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and click off the YouTube so that it stays just pure audio content. But I'm going to go ahead and hang around on Twitch for a little bit and just try to, like, get my settlers some potatoes and stuff. If at any point you want to send in a track, I'm still here. I'll still give it a listen. But yeah, signing off on the YouTube so that it doesn't get, full of just me trying to build a house. All right. See y'all.